I'm Corbett Wall with DV Auction, here with your feeder flash for Monday, October the 17th, brought to you in part by Macrocin by Bimeda. Interested in saving money with Macrocin? Go to macrocin.com to learn more about how it compared head-to-head versus Pioneer products on a 4,600 head trial. Joplin Regional Stockyards got a moderate run here for this Monday. And they've had a little bit of rain in that part of southwest Missouri, but still very dry. And you know, it's not a great time in that area because they didn't have much rain there the last part of the summer. Had a lot of rain earlier in the spring. Got them spoiled, and then all of a sudden turned off like a spigot. But you guys don't forget about commingling at Joplin Regional Stockyards. If you get the cattle in there by Sunday afternoon at 5 o'clock, you've got small bunches or individuals. They will group them with other people's cattle of like kind and class, and then they will sell at the high time, 11 o'clock in the morning on Monday, and they bring a big premium compared to the small bunches. It's a free service. Goes right along with selling cattle there, but it's sure worth doing. But check out Joplin Regional Stockyards for all your cattle marketing needs. The worm has turned, and I'm not even nervous about saying that. I believe it is finally time. We've been waiting for tight numbers at some level. We've got tight numbers of cattle commercially at every single level from one end to the other, but I think finally we have got tight enough numbers of market-ready cattle. Our grading has been suffering for the last several weeks or even a few months here, and we're finally getting to the part where it's going to help the demand and going to help our market on cattle substantially. And so you say, well, what happened? Well, on this last week in our fat cattle trade, we saw in the few small brick and mortar fat cattle auctions that your packers were kind of playing coy and they weren't really getting too aggressive. Of course, there was light numbers of cattle, so they weren't really missing out on anything. But then as they started getting into cattle, and we saw how desperate they are for cattle that are grading, you know, a high percentage of high choice and prime, if there's any of those cattle out there, that they pretty much just laid their cards on the table. And so now we see they got more aggressive as the week went on. We saw higher prices in the south. We saw higher prices finally at the end of the week in the northern plains. It seemed the northern plains wasn't going to trade hardly anything, but the guys that trade the negotiated cash cattle in the northern plains, Nebraska and Iowa, they knew how desperate these packers were for good grading cattle, and they held out and finally posted 150. I've been talking about what a big threshold that would be. That's not going to be our weighted average. I mean the whole market in the 5 area or even in the northern plains. But we did post some cattle at 150 in Iowa. On Friday afternoon, I heard of rumors of 150 trade in Nebraska. We won't get that information until our next visit from USDA. But we'll give you that. But I believe there were some cattle even in western Nebraska, which we don't always see them get top prices, but they've got some good grading cattle out there. Maybe some 150 in eastern Nebraska. But like I said, we did post the 150 in Iowa. That's something we've been craving, trying to get. And you think, well, gosh, is that tops forever? Don't forget, in 2014, we had a market in the north of 173. So we've still got plenty of room to climb before we hit historic levels in that, but it's just good to see. We've also finally seen our choice select spread kind of indicate where we're at with the cattle not grading nearly as good as what your packers would like to see them. We got a choice select spread on last week's weighted average of the whole week's trade of over $31.50 per hundred. Now that's getting pretty well spread out there, but it's just everything's indicating what we've known. They've been hiding it for the last several weeks and even a few months that, oh well, we're getting by on this. We're not getting too aggressive on that. But whenever they go up to 145 in the southern plains, that's a buck higher. And then we finally seen some higher trade in the northern plains late in the week. I mean, late on Thursday and late on Friday too. That they're a little bit lax in getting that information turned into mandatory price reporting because they really don't want it widely known. Of course, everybody's going to know it eventually when they get all the information in for the week. But you know, they traded cattle at 11 o'clock in Iowa at 150, and at 2 o'clock in the afternoon they still didn't have those cattle put into mandatory price reporting. So they were just a little lax on getting that information in there because they thought they might find a few dummies that would still selling some cattle at 146 or 147 in the north. But we've definitely seen our tight numbers of market-ready cattle in our 5-area feeding region result in higher prices. I think once we knock down 150 in a big way, I don't think there's a limit to it on the upside. I think we can go well into that area because it's just we're going to be running into progressively lighter numbers of market-ready cattle. Even though we've got a lot of cattle on feed, there's no place for them to be. We're over 1 million head short of cattle outside the feedlots. So we know there's a lot of cattle in the feedlots, but they're a big, wide range of weights, even 4-weight calves in the feedlots, because there's just no place for them to forage because it's been so terrible dry. But talking about how dry it is, we also got a multi-million-dollar rain in the southern plains over the weekend and then on Sunday for the most part. Sunday morning, Sunday during the day, Sunday afternoon. Started over in New Mexico, come across eastern New Mexico, the Texas Panhandle, and I'm not talking about a gully washer, but measurable amounts of rain, and then coming in to western Oklahoma, even parts of North Texas and the northern part of Central Texas, where they've been really dry still from that historic drought that they had back this summer. They had some big rains come after that, and then it's turned off again and been dry again. But significant rainfall, and like I said, not a gully washer, but I saw some big cells over places like Shamrock, Texas, Eric, Oklahoma, Logan, New Mexico, and it was just moving slowly across like it always does, but it's definitely going to help the wheat country there. And I'm not saying that they're going to get to turn out, you know, in early November like they really like to, but they might get to turn out by the first of the year, and that's what people are really hoping for. Look at your board for last week. October live cattle futures. Monday was down 62, Tuesday up $1.10, Wednesday up 37, Thursday up 27, and Friday up 50 cents, with October live cattle futures ending the week at 146.95, up $1.63. Now all your rest of your traded months were down, but I think that's going to change a lot early this week. But December live cattle futures ended the week at 147.77, down 28 cents for the week. October feeder cattle, Monday was down 262. Tuesday we got it all back and more, up 297. Wednesday was up 42. Thursday down 75. Friday down 95. So took most of it back, but October feeder cattle ended the week at 173.80, down 92 cents for the week. November down 85 for the week at 174.77. Chicago Board of Trade grain futures, corn ended the week at 6.89 3/4, up 6.5 cents for the week. Beans up 16 3/4 cents for the week at 13.83 3/4. Your fat cattle trade up through Thursday, 49,200 head. And you think, well, that's very disappointing, and normally we have more trade when we have a better market, but I'm thinking that doesn't count the late Thursday trade that they were so lax in turning in, and all your Friday trade. I think we're going to have another big week by the time we turn all that stuff in that we haven't seen yet. But it may not be as big as some of them we've seen here lately, you know, near 80-some thousand. But I think it's going to be significantly larger than that 49.2. But look at your live prices in your 5-area feeding region. 5-area feeding region last week steady to a buck higher from 143 all the way up to 150. Weighted average on live steers up through Thursday was 146.77. That was about a $0.50 higher than your weighted average for last week. $1 to $2 higher on dress sales from 228 to 232. Weighted average last week on your dress steers was 231.61. That was up about $1.40 from the previous week's weighted average. So big gains there in your fat cattle market. Friday we had some more trade that wasn't included in that. Of course, Colorado's confidential. We'll probably never get to see that trade again. Iowa 4,000 head, 24,000 for the week. Live sales on Friday from 147 to 150. Dress sales from 232 to 234. Iowa's got the best cattle as far as grading, as far as quality grading. They're going to get the best prices because that's what packers really need. Nebraska 3,400 head, 18,800 head for the week. That's a little bit light for them, but like I said, I think there was more trade than what's been turned in. Live sales 147 to 148. Dress sales from 230 to 232. Kansas did not have any confirmed sales on Friday, and only 4,600 head for the week negotiated, which is pretty disgusting. Most of your sales were at 145, which was a buck higher. But I did note they had nearly 15,000 head sell negotiated grid, basically at the same market, but it was for those cattle feeders that thought they had better grading cattle. They wanted to turn them in on the negotiated grid to get some kickers because we're starting to see such a big plus for better grading cattle right there, which that's great. Negotiated grid is great, but when you don't have enough people trading fully negotiated, true negotiated sales, then you don't have that core market to start from, and that's what I've been complaining about for the last 2 or 3 years. Texas didn't have any confirmed sales on Friday either, but 9,100 head for the week, which is more normal for them, and about 4,900 head of negotiated grid sales reported. Box beef cutout values were lower again, but we're starting to see that big spread in the Choice Select like I talked about earlier there. But all of last week's sales of Choice Cuts had a weighted average price of $246.31. That was down 58 cents from the previous week. Our late sales on Friday were about 60 cents better than that. So it's kind of on the upswing, and I think surely we've gotten to the bottom of our seasonal declines on box beef cutout values. It should start coming around now because it's not long before our holiday season comes back. Select weighted average for all of last week was 214.74, down 437, and your late week sales were a couple dollars higher than that at 216.94. But like I said, that big Choice Select spread on all of last week's sales, $31.57, and we saw a pretty brisk movement of spot trade there. A current delivery at 722 loads of cuts, grinds, and trimmings. Slaughter for last week continued aggressive, but not quite as aggressive as the previous week. But 660,000 harvested was 4 less than the previous week and 17,000 more than the same week a year ago. Talk about our feeder cattle market. Your real-time index on DV auction late in the week or ending the week at 173.19. That was basically steady or 4 cents higher than the end of the previous week. Spent over the weekend down in South Texas, extreme South Texas, at El Campo, Texas, at the sale barn there. G&A Auctions had a consignment replacement sale with a lot of those F1 crossbred Brayford type replacement females. And man, I was surprised how good they sold now. It's not as bad as far as dryness down there on the coast as it is up and further into central Texas there, but it's still not great. But you know, they were selling those heifer pairs and young cow pairs there up to $2,600 a pair. And a lot of you guys that listen to this report in the Midwest and further up into the plains, you wouldn't take those cattle for anything, but that's what they want. And if you lived in the humidity and the heat down in South Texas, you'd want those too. But talk about your markets for last week and your sale barns. Feeders were mostly steady to firm. Calves were very volatile, sharply lower early in the week last week, and then rebounding most of that late in the week at late week sales. I'm thinking that your calves are going to be higher to start the week, especially where they were a bunch lower last week, especially with some of this rain that's come across the southern plains. And I expect your markets to be, for the most part, higher on your calves and feeder cattle, because it's going to be emboldened by the fat cattle higher trade, the little bit of moisture there, and just some confidence going forward here is what we really needed. And like I said, the worm has finally turned a little bit here, and our numbers and availability of true yearling feeder cattle are dwindling very, very fast. About all you're going to find here going forward is some that's been backgrounded in a lot, and they're not going to feed anything like our grass yearlings, but we're just running out of those. There hasn't been a whole lot of grass to run those on, but we did see some in the northern plains sale this week, very, very respectably higher. But talk about your big sales late in the week and over the weekend. Fort Scott Livestock in Fort Scott, Kansas there. You look at these loads of steers that they sold on Saturday at their Saturday sale, including 4 loads of 9-weight steers there that sell from $162.25 to $166.85, and that would be several dollars higher than they traded those last week there in extreme eastern Kansas there. Your Zoetis stickout sale of the day was Fort Pierre Livestock Auction, Fort Pierre, South Dakota. 7,800 head on offer there. Calves were mostly lower. Yearlings were mostly higher. Like they said, these were probably some of the last grass yearlings coming to town, and didn't have a comparison on those yearlings really, because we hadn't seen too many of them coming before, but dwindling supplies of yearlings there. And you look at these loads that I pulled of yearling feeders in Fort Pierre. Of course, there was jillions of loads of them of calves. We're seeing a lot of those, but not many of yearlings. But in these yearlings that I pulled off Cattle Market Central, you can see 2 loads of 9-weight steers that were about $5 over what your index levels are for an 800-pound steer, and then 4 loads of 8-weight heifers selling about $5 over what your steer market is. So big demand in the northern plains for true yearling feeder cattle. I'll give you a few individual quotes. How about Bloomington Livestock Exchange? Bloomington, Wisconsin, 50 head of steers weigh 827 at $183. Crawford Livestock Market on some calves. How about 53 head fancy 500-pound steer calves on the button, bring $2.30 a pound. And the best quote that I saw anywhere late last week or over the weekend, and your Macrison, no BS, top quote for the day, come out of St. Onge Livestock, St. Onge, South Dakota. My buddy Justin Tupper there. Not only did he sell 2 loads of 670 weight steers for $210 that didn't make the government market report, not sure why he showed up if he wasn't going to include them, but he also had these stickout sale for the late last week, which was 86 steers, weighed 721 pounds at $203.50. And that's your feeder flash for Monday.